Hi, are we recording? Yes, we're recording. Hi, I'm Theron Q. Ramacharaka. Thank you for clicking on the channel. Just a couple of administrative things here to get started. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, please. If you like the channel, subscribe to it, please. And share it with other people. Let other people know about it so they too can share in the joy. All right. Number 2, administrative affair. My AirBook laptop has finally just completely gone. So I cannot continue to upload my Mac OS formatted files that I have in storage on an external drive to my channel like I had planned it to continue doing until I get another Mac AirBook or similar product to use. So if you have any such thing to donate, let me know in the comment section below. All right, now moving on. I did not write a script for this, but I'm going to wing it. So there will be content right here. This is about William Walker Atkinson and, let's say, universal laws. You might call them spiritual laws. I don't care. But universal laws. All right. He narrowed down, as I recall, the best work that he did on it in writing. He narrowed universal laws down to a quantity of 7. Now, look. If you go looking in the library or online anywhere for universal laws, universal principles of operation, spiritual laws, you're going to find this subject coming up many times and in many different contexts. Let's just say books or written material, website information, text, any such thing. You may find even plenty of sources that just list spiritual laws or universal laws. That writer or that person's point of view on it. And you will find in large that every list will have a different quantity and it will have differing content. Now, some such laws will show up repeatedly across the board almost, and others may not. I've seen lists of universal laws that at least one list that exceeded in quantity 100, a list of over 100. Well, after a while, I started to think to myself, what should I do now? If I really want to, believe any of this, if I'm really looking for actual information here that's useful and perhaps corresponds with reality, yeah, that's what I was after. So I wanted to now figure this out for myself, I guess. Because nobody else seems to have any definitive thing because everybody's differing on it. And they probably all believe they have the definitive final thing. Maybe they do. But anyway, now I want to find something out here. So what do I have to do now? Write all these down and then go through a process of figuring out probably, if I have 150 of these written down now from everything I've found put together. It must be the case that some handful among all these lie at the root or are in operation all the time, or lie at the root of all the rest of them in this list. Like some that are more fundamental to others. Like, what are the most fundamental ones? Such that you cannot combine them together or break them apart anymore. This resulting handful than what they are. What I found, though, when I came upon William Walker Atkinson's layout of this such a list and discussion of the contents of that list, the elements in that set, numbered in 7, and it was in the Arcane Teachings that he wrote, the Arcane Teaching. All right. Well, I figured, all right, that's probably what I would have come up with right there. I haven't found anything that works better, sounds better, is more intuitive, is more logical, is more complete, and is more fundamental at the same time. I couldn't think of it. In my opinion, perhaps no such list exists, no such list other than his exists, that meets those requirements, that is perceivable or even thought of by humanity at this point in its current state of evolvement. So I'm not saying that no such list could be better. It's just, I don't think it exists. Maybe something is good, but it'd be really close to this. So, all right, so he came up with what laws? Like the law of analogy. Oh, yeah, he came up with some in the Kabbalion, too. But as I recall, the arcane teaching, yeah, I'm pretty sure about this. I checked into this several times in the past. I think the result of my looking into it was the arcane teaching was written after the Kabbalion, although the Kabbalion might not actually have a date. But there's an alleged time when that was written, at least. Yeah, all right. The arcane teaching came after. I'm pretty sure of that, but even if that's not true, my point can still stand on its own here. It is a better description in the arcane teaching. A better list, a better description. Some names were changed. One or two were eliminated, but replaced by others. It's the same basic stuff, though, essentially. Same basic idea. I think you just might find it more clearly and understandably stated and make more sense in the arcane teaching, which is here on my channel. Did I even finish uploading that whole book? I don't know. I need that. I need a Mac, like AirBook or something. One that works. I need that. I need your help with that. All right, now listen. So it's a list that's usable. That's what I wanted to come up with. A list that's usable. A list of stuff that, these things, this list of laws or whatever, it's the real thing. Nothing would happen without them. And they're all needed. They all work together. They all have like equal power. None are more fundamental than the other. They're all always at work. You could consider them as a cluster. If you condense that, if you push that cluster really tightly together, you really just see one thing at work. One law. The law, you might call it. The law at work. All right. But anyway, like the principle of balance, the principle of rhythm, principle of the law of rhythm, the law of balance, law of order, law of sequence, law of analogy. There were two more. I keep forgetting those off the tip of my tongue. I should know them, right? I'm supposed to be the expert. Well, I used to be able to name them all, but I'm over 60 years old now, and my memory is... All right, so anyway, and I'm lazy. But there were two more. Now listen, some lists will say there's a law of cause and effect. Infallible law of cause and effect. It's always at work. That sounds really good, doesn't it? That sounds like a fundamental. It just shows up everywhere. Nothing can happen without a cause, right? It takes an efficient cause to cause something to happen. And nothing happens without efficient cause, right? There are things that are necessary for something to happen, and then there are things that will just make it happen. There are necessary and sufficient conditions at work. But there's always a cause. No matter what you consider cause to be, there's always a cause. That's the way it seems. I call that a principle of operation, though, not a universal law. I see that in the arcane teaching, yes, Atkinson said something in his way of talking in this context of discourse and this context of reference, referring to reality here, universal law reality, was very much in Atkinson's way of talking. It's kind of like the same thing that something like that the Western Enlightenment period, David Hume said about cause and effect. Hume said, in very paraphrasedly here, there is no real cause and effect. It's like it's a perception. We perceive that, but it's kind of like a falsity. What we see is a series of events, or what we see are phenomena taking place in such a manner that we're going to deduce a cause and effect thing. This idea of a cause we're going to throw in there. But that's not exactly the way it works. Okay, Atkinson eliminated the law of cause and effect. He didn't put that in his list in the arcane teaching, but he does have two others, a law of order and a law of sequence. Well, I put those together. I mean, I saw, and I think he hinted at this once, just maybe once, as I recall. Maybe even said it directly, that cause and effect really is a combination of order and sequence working together. Okay, so I created a statement out of that, a phrase that helps think about that, helps us think about that. You know, like things, it simplifies it. And I think this works well when we're talking about what comes about to, you know, look like cause and effect to us, or to be cause and effect. Things happen in an orderly sequence. When things are happening in an orderly sequence, what we're going to see is something that we're very likely to call cause and effect. And then and some of that whole idea might be our own addition to what's going on. That's what Hume was saying. And Atkinson doesn't say that. He's going the direction of Hume with it. He's just, you know, getting down to what he considered to be fundamentals. Okay, so I call cause and effect kind of like be a result of things happening in orderly sequence. Cause and effect is our assessment of affairs, but it's there. You know, we are perceiving something that we call that. Okay, so cause and effect, I just say, is a principle of operation. We're going to find it everywhere because things are happening according to, you know, with two laws working together, order and sequence. Well, Atkinson does name those in the arcane teaching. I think this is a big plus for him. All right. So we can, you know, I could take that. Let's just say I take that thinking and I think, well, this could apply to a lot of different levels of things. Not just the level at which we're talking about it. You know, maybe I can find that at work in everything. Well, then I look for it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. All right. So there's an application of the law of analogy. Literarily, the law of analogy, you know, you create a logical analogy in writing or speaking or your thinking, you know, an analogy. This is to that as this, you know, this prime is to that prime, that kind of thing. Yeah, right. Okay, an analogy. But metaphysically, what's being referred to by that kind of language is, you know, things operating according to the same principles of operation, according to the same laws, same basic formula at work, but at different levels of manifestation. Maybe different, you know, dimensions of a thing, different planes of a thing, different, you know, mind, body, thoughts, emotions, willpower, attention control. Get what I mean? Law of analogy at work. Now, best way for those things to work would be probably rhythmically. There's some kind of a rhythm, law of rhythm. It's always going to be there. Things, you know, you can bring in all these laws and find that probably, I mean, arguably, but I think at the end of the day, they're all fundamental to each other. And no more are really required to keep the cosmic motor, you know, chugging along. Now, here's another thing that I want to bring into play here. If you take the material in the Kabbalion and you take the material in the arcane teaching and roll them together, I think somehow I came up with this. A way to describe what's going on as a result of, you know, this cluster of 7 working together and doing what they do. A way to name or define that with a simple phrase, is that what we have is conscious substance in motion. We have conscious substance in motion. Just like we see cause and effect in the corresponding operations of order and sequence, we find the idea of conscious in affairs. Self-aware, sentient, whatever you want to call it. All right? But life, we are participating in that. And we have a name for that aspect of affairs. But that is a natural result of conscious, of these 7 things working together. With us perceiving from a focal point of perception and experience what's happening. And all points are like that. We have the same basic I-ness throughout, sense of I, manifesting at all of its levels. Some very primitive. Working together, conscious substance in motion. We can also take another point of view, maybe a natural science point of view, contemporary, a current, postmodern natural science point of view, and say, listen, what's really going on at the basis of things? We have 3 things happening together, 3 different phases of the same thing, 3 different ways to name the same one thing that seems to be just a constant here now going on. What we have is mathematical operations going on. It's like all one big mathematical formula at work, which can be broken down into many components, involving each phenomena. It's mathematical in essence. Plus, number 2, equally as essential, logic states. States of being on and off. This is on, but that's off right now. Okay, that's on, but now that's off. There are more things off than there are on right now. On and off states may be fed with mathematical information. But is one fundamental to the other? No. Categorically different things. But categorically different with respect to ways of looking at the same phenomena, ways of talking about it, aspects that it involves together, right? And the third is electromagnetic fluctuations. Basically electrical. Now, it's really funny, that the substance involved there, the only actual substance involved there, we've got mathematical operations, on and off states, and electromagnetic phenomena. The only thing that even smacks of being physical there or having any corporeality, let's put it that way, at any level is the electrical thing. And isn't it interesting that at this level of discourse, at this level of fundamentalness, when we're talking about electromagnetic fluctuations, the electrical part of that is talked about and has been for a very long time in some remote corners as being what prana really is, what vril really is. And I'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who could talk me out of my belief that things are fundamentally, in large, like really fundamentally electrical in nature. Things being positive to one another, or negative to one another. Just polarity type talk. Another of the principles, the laws that William Walker Atkinson points out, I forget if I mentioned this before when I named 5 of them, the law of opposites. At work. Now, polarity talk, like the principle of polarity. You've heard of that. You might take that to be the same as the law of opposites. Again, I divide law of opposites into, there's the law, the principle of operation that comes from it or is associated with it, You know, the first appearance that it makes to us in reality is as the the operational principle of polarity. Remember I said principles of operation? Well, this would be the one called polarity. That's the way I distinguish between those two things. Law of opposites and the principle of polarity. Okay, so there's that too. We bring that into our view here in this discussion. I just have one little starting point here. What I'm trying to get at is elucidating what we take to be universal laws, discussing it with you in a one-way monologue here, and talking about William Walker Atkinson, the arcane teaching, and a slightly deeper view than he was able to provide in the space provided and in the context of the arcane teaching itself. So I hope that this has been a bit of a clarification and deepening of understanding regarding what we call universal laws. I'm Theron Ramacharaka. Be well.